Hello there, welcome back. One of the hardest concepts I've seen beginners of colored pencil art struggle with is the concept of layering. Now, in this video, I'm going to be taking you through how I made this realistic drawing of some fruits and vegetables using layering, but with a technique that is rarely talked about, but yet achieves the most realistic look in my opinion. So layering is crucial if you want to have a realistic looking drawing. It simply means stacking colors on top of each other when we shade in order to create depth and realism. Now, most of the teachings around layering suggest that you start by layering the lightest colors before moving on to the darker colors, because it's difficult or almost impossible to layer light colors over darker ones when using colored pencils. However, in this video, I'm going to teach you a method that allows you to layer lighter colors over darker ones easily, hence obtaining an even more realistic looking drawing. Now, it's true that for most artworks, layering from light to dark works best, and I do that most of the time. However, in a lot of cases, you will still have to layer lighter colors over darker ones for maximum realism, and I'm going to be demonstrating just that. So, I've broken down layering into 3 parts, and I believe this is the simplest it gets when explaining layering, especially with the method I'll be teaching you. These are the base layer, the darker layers, and in certain instances, the white or near white layer. The base layer is that layer or color with which you can confidently cover the entire drawing area. It is the first layer and the lightest color of the object or image being drawn. However, it should not be white or close to white for obvious reasons. I mean, most of the time we are working on white paper, so it will make no sense if we use white or colors that are close to white as our base layer. If it's white or close to white, we move to the next lightest color of the image and use that as our base layer. We then consider the white or near white areas as another layer. The darker layers, as the name suggests, are the other layers that are darker than the base layer, and is the second layer or set of layers. We layer them progressively till we get to the darkest layer. Before we demonstrate with our drawing, I would like to explain quickly with a sphere how this technique works. Now, this is very important. Consider this sphere. What would you say is the lightest color? This area, right? Now, this is a very light shade of gray that is almost white. Therefore, we cannot use this as our base layer. It will be our near white layer. So then let's move on to the next lightest color in the image. And it's this color, another shade of gray, but not as light as the first one. So this is going to be our base layer, and we'll cover the entire drawing area with this color without worrying about any other areas of the drawing. This right here will be our darker layers. I'm using different shades of grey and a black colored pencil from the Prismacolor Premier set for this. For the base layer, I'm using a warm grey 20% and moving in circular motions, making sure I completely fill the entire circle. So this is our base layer done. The next step is to use a solvent to evenly spread the pigment of the base layer by way of blending. Now this is crucial. It is the reason we'll be able to layer lighter colors on top later. Any good solvent will do. They are quite cheap and you can easily obtain them in any art shop. So I blend using either a brush or a Q-tip. So we are done here, and you may be wondering, why didn't we leave this spot white like it seems to appear in the image? Well, don't worry, we'll get to that in a bit. So now we move to our darker layers and we layer progressively till we get to the darkest layer. By the way, don't forget to check out my completely free ebook, The Basics of Realistic Colored Pencil Art. Very helpful, especially if you are just starting out with colored pencil art. I'll put a link to it in the description. After layering with the darker colors, we do another round of blending, and we can always go back with our pencils to redefine certain areas. Now, to answer the previous question, we did not leave this spot white, and that's because, as I said earlier, it's not pure white. It's a very light shade of grey. Therefore, by our method, it is a near white layer. And we obtain this by light to moderate pressure using the white pencil over the area of interest. Secondly, it is easier to create a realistic effect by layering colors or lighter colors on top of darker tones rather than leaving those light areas purely white when they are not, and trying to figure out what to do with them later. Now let's move on to our drawing using this green pepper as an example. What do you think is the lightest color here? Perhaps this area here, right? However, it is nearly white and therefore we cannot use it as our base layer. The base layer is a light shade of green along this side, so we'll be covering the entire area uniformly with a light shade of green without considering any other color. If you've enjoyed this so far, don't forget to subscribe for more tips and tutorials. Also like and comment if you have any questions, and I'll be glad to respond to all your questions. Next, we blend with a solvent. Always ensure you have enough pigment down before you blend. We then move to the darker layers and we layer progressively until we get to the darkest layers. After, we blend again and go over with the colored pencils to reinforce and redefine certain areas. So pay attention to the shapes and direction of some of the darker layers. This will help create a more natural look. I usually do the white or near white layers last, like you can see me do here. And you can always go back and redefine certain areas of the drawing. So there we have it, and we can tell by comparison to the reference how realistic it is looking. Let's move on to the eggplant. Now the base layer here is an indigo blue with certain areas being slightly lighter than others. It may appear to be close to white, but it's really not. And if you had to use a color checker, you would notice this. So as before, we blend and then move to the darker layers. Now what you see me do here is very lightly layering the white colored pencil over some areas of the base layer. This is to help lighten those areas up a bit, not necessarily to create a white layer. As I said initially, the base layer is really indigo blue with certain areas being slightly lighter than others, so I'm using a white colored pencil to create this effect. And this is another reason why this method of layering, in my opinion, is the best, because with this I can achieve the most realistic look possible. So we've gone through an image that has a nearly white layer, that's the green pepper, and one that does not have white or nearly white areas, that's the eggplant. So what do we do when we have an image that has a pure white layer? Well, first of all, it is very uncommon to find pure white layers occurring in large areas. They are usually very minute and we can easily pick them up using the white gel pen. In fact, I treat them as details. Look closely at these blueberries and you would notice some pure white spots. So this is the layering technique I used to achieve the realistic look in this drawing. Don't forget to subscribe, comment and like. Also, don't forget to download my free ebook on the basics of realistic colored pencil art. The link will be in the description. I'll see you in the next one.